Welcome to Exhuming the Truth, the podcast where we delve into the mysterious worlds of cold cases, missing persons, true crime, and the fascinating science that is forensics. I'm forensic scientist and criminologist Asha Walther, and I am so thrilled to have you with me on this journey as we dance in the shadows of the world of crime, shining a light on scientific discovery while becoming another voice for those who need it most. So grab a drink and get comfortable while we jump into this episode together. As always, I would like to extend a content and trigger warning. This podcast is recommended for persons over the age of 18 and contains explicit content not suitable for minors. We will be covering sensitive content that ranges from sexual assault, physical, mental, social and emotional abuse, suicide, homicide, murder, attempted murder, and other violent crimes, including crimes involving weapons and drugs. This often extends to drug misuse and other harmful and illegal activity. If you find any content to be distressing, I have listed a number of resources that may be able to help you in the podcast notes. I would like to also remind our listeners that all victims and all perpetrators are someone's loved one, so I ask that any discussions in our group or on our social accounts remain respectful of that at all times. And by listening today, you acknowledge that all persons of interest remain innocent until proven otherwise. Hi guys, I am coming to you tonight from my bed, and I know that sounds super lazy. However, I'm actually really proud of myself to be at the point where I can record from my bed or anywhere in my house. I wish I had have been onto this sooner, so when it was like 6 consecutive weeks of heat waves, I could be in the aircon, but I just wasn't that wise at the time. So for housekeeping this week, I have a couple of things. The first thing and the most exciting thing is it is our 6-month birthday, which is really exciting. I know it doesn't sound that great, but for us, that's a huge milestone. I honestly wasn't sure how far that this would go, and I knew that I wanted it to be a podcast, but B, much more than that and much bigger than that. And I wanted to definitely add victim advocacy to my business, which I've started to do, which is awesome. So I can't believe we're still digging. In 6 months, we've released 12 true crime episodes. I have started the Human Condition series to share real life resilience, so I have that coming up next season. I've designed our first cold case subscription box that's coming. I've built workshops that teach kids to handle big feelings, detective style. So that is actually going to be our little mascot for that, for school incursions, is Sherlock Bones. I've worked with drone teams over the last 6 months and forensic experts on missing persons cases and current cases, which... Sorry, I had to stop. My phone alarm went off. It's very unprofessional, but I want this to be as personal as possible. So here we are. There's been a lot of missing persons cases and a lot of systemic gaps that need to be focused on, which gives us a really good place to be, I think. Obviously not in terms of where we are in society, but where we need to be. And that's the direction I want to head, and I want to bridge those gaps, and I want to give voices to those families. And in saying that, I have been able to connect with thousands of listeners, literally thousands. I've had so many emails and social media messages. I've literally onboarded one of my best friends, Josh. I've spoken about him before. He helps me edit and he's helping me with the website. But I literally messaged him today and I'm like, can you please be admin of these things? I just can't cope. I think honestly, I've only cried like 8 times in this process of learning how to do a podcast and learning how to edit it. It was like super overwhelming. So that's a great amount of breakdowns for me. But to all my listeners and supporters and, you at-home sleuths, I guess, thank you. Your support makes it all possible and justifies my very late nights. Most nights are late nights. My partner Cameron can attest to that. He's sick of me being on the computer in bed, but I'm so incredibly invested and I have some really exciting things coming up business-wise, and a lot of cases and families that want to use this platform, and that's what it's for at the end of the day. So here's to the next chapter. More cases, more compassion, more coffee, more late nights, maybe even a TV appearance coming up. I can't believe I'm saying that, but yeah, thank you. Thanks, everyone. It's been really awesome, and I love my job so much. And when I first actually quit doing postgraduate research, I was a bit hesitant, I guess, because I was like, oh my God, am I leaving something I've worked so hard for nothing? And by having you guys listen and contribute and comment, even the negative comments, dare I say it, that are like, oh, this case isn't real. There was one on YouTube today and they're like, this is all money making, which is just wild to me because I really haven't made $1. But yeah, I thought, am I doing the right thing? And I really feel like I am, and I'm on the right path. And yeah, I seek work that has a purpose, and that's what this does. So thank you so much to everybody who contributes in any which way. And if you feel like sharing the podcast or any of the pages or anything like that, please feel free. I do also have a merchandise drop coming. Woohoo! I've just ordered all the samples. So once I'm pleased with those, I'll share them with you. But that's another exciting thing. Today's episode is about Pheobe Bishop. I just want to say, before I go into this case, this is going to be a bit of a long episode because I was initially going to split it into 2 and I thought, no, I'm just going to do 1. I also want to say that this is a touchy subject, it feels, because obviously we have a young woman who's missing, a beautiful young girl, 17 years old. It's incredibly sad. The whole situation is incredibly sad. But on the other side of the coin, it makes me really, really sad for my other cases and my other families who didn't get this exposure. So while Pheobe absolutely deserves this exposure, and I hope it continues for her, I wish it was like this for our Indigenous families, our families with elderly people missing, and our families with men missing, like our Jack McLennan case. I just wish that this exposure was the same for him. And I wish that all missing persons cases really had this exposure right up until the case is resolved. So it's really sad. But we do have a number of resources in the podcast notes if you need them. But let's get straight into it. I'm going to start off with a timeline just so we're all on the same page. So we start the timeline of Pheobe Bishop's missing case on Thursday, the 15th of May, 2025. At approximately 8:30 a.m, Pheobe is reportedly dropped off at Airport Drive near Bundaberg Regional Airport by her housemates, Tanika Bromley and James Wood. She was scheduled to board a flight to Brisbane and from there to WA to visit her boyfriend. CCTV footage confirms that Pheobe never entered the airport terminal and her luggage also remains missing. Friday, the 16th of May at 6 p.m, a missing persons report is filed with Queensland Police Service after Pheobe fails to board her flight and cannot be contacted. Saturday, May 17, Phoebe's mother, Kylie Johnson, issues a public appeal on social media expressing her concern over her daughter's disappearance. Over 400 missing person posters are distributed and displayed across the Wide Bay region, including Bundaberg, Childers and Gingin. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Again, I know the Queensland people are going to come after me if I'm not, and I'm so sorry. Wednesday, May 21, police declare the Gingin property where Pheobe was living and a 2011 grey to silver Hyundai iX35 vehicle as 2 separate crime scenes. Investigators confirm that Pheobe never entered the airport terminal based on CCTV footage. Friday, May the 23rd, the search for Pheobe expands to the Goodnight Scrub National Park, approximately 40 kilometres south of Gingin. Specialist units including homicide detectives, dive teams, SES and cadaver dogs are deployed to assist in the search. Saturday, May the 24th, reports emerge of deceased dogs being removed from the Gingin property where Pheobe resided. This is all alleged information at this point. Phoebe's mother describes the ongoing ordeal as a nightmare and continues to plead for public assistance via social media. Sunday, May 25th, Tanika Bromley, Phoebe's 33-year-old flatmate, is arrested in Millbank, Queensland, on charges related to unlawful possession of weapons and explosives. Firearms and ammunition are discovered in the Hyundai at the Gingin property. Authorities say this is not related. Monday, May 26, Bromley appears in a Bundaberg Magistrates Court. Her partner, James Wood, also attends but is not charged. Police continue to appeal for information, particularly sightings of the Hyundai iX35 between May 15 and May 18. As of right now, Phoebe still remains missing along with her luggage. There's been no social media or bank account activity under her accounts. This case is being treated as suspicious and the investigations are ongoing, with authorities urging anyone with information to come forward. Phoebe is described as approximately 180 centimetres tall, with long dark hair that has been dyed red, hazel eyes, and was last seen wearing a green tank top and grey sweatpants. So without speculation, and I know it's very hard in 2025 to have an opinion without it coming across as speculation, but I'm going to do both a criminological analysis and a forensic analysis on this case. That's basically what this episode is today, so if that's of your interest, that's where we're headed. I cannot give you any extra information than what the media is sharing, or information that I'm sharing with you on this case has been derived by OSINT, which we've previously spoken about. That is open source intelligence. It's information anybody can find. It's free information. But the following information is based off my knowledge as a criminologist and forensic scientist. So criminological analysis is fundamentally based off theoretical and sociological standpoints. If we're looking through a criminology lens, we're asking why crime happens. So we're looking at human behaviour, power dynamics, cultural influences, and structural inequalities. So criminological analysis, you can say, is more of an idea-driven rather than data-driven purpose. We can use things like theories such as strain theory, routine activity theory, and labelling theory, patterns of deviance or control, psychological patterns, economic and social motivations, case studies, and even lived experience from this standpoint. So with that being said, on one hand, or as I like to explain it, one side of my brain is forensics, which is telling us what happened with things like DNA, data, decomp, etc. Criminology is the other side of my brain, and it's asking why. Why did Phoebe disappear? Why might someone cover it up? Criminology is less about fingerprints in the lab and more about power, vulnerability, and things like social pressure. It's theory-based. It's not test tube-based, but it's just about as equally as crucial in seeing the full picture here, and also critical in crime prevention, which is a huge one. So within our criminological analysis, we have victimology. So as the word describes, we're essentially creating a victim profile, and it can be as straightforward as this. Profile, Pheobe Bishop, 17, described as empathetic and spirited by her family. Her last known movements were allegedly being dropped off at Bundaberg Regional Airport by housemates, but never entered the terminal. So her social and financial activity are also involved here, and there has been no activity on social media or bank accounts since May 15. Part of the victimology goes into the residence. Where was she living? What were her living conditions? Her residence has been described by various media outlets as cluttered and unsanitary, and I would have to agree with that. Reports from the Courier Mail and 7 News say that Bromley, the female housemate, was living in a bus outside the main house, which contradicts claims of a stable residence as per other media reports. Again, without speculation, we know that Tanika, I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm going to say Tanika, I don't know. She was arrested, as I previously said, with weapons and explosives and charges on firearms and ammunition being found in the Hyundai and at the residence. Prior to Phoebe's disappearance, she also faced numerous weapons-related charges, so this wasn't her first time, and I just want to make that clear, because when you're looking at the news, sometimes they like to just quickly jump on the closest person, and while she may be involved, we cannot say that she is right now, and it's really important to know that this isn't new behaviour of her housemate to have weapons-related charges. In March this year, actually, she had appeared in Bundaberg Magistrates Court again on charges including unlawful possession of a sawn-off shotgun, possession of a flick knife, and carrying a knife in a public place. At the time of her most recent arrest, she was on bail for these offences, and that information you can read more about on The Australian or on 7 News. But after Phoebe's disappearance, police searched the residence where they allegedly found a bunch of weapons, essentially. So that included a shortened firearm, 2 handguns, ammunition, and they were located in the vicinity of the residence and the Hyundai. So I'm unsure specifically if they were in the car or the residence or in the car that was at the residence, but there's that. So from there, the housemate was then charged with 2 counts of authority required to possess explosives, 1 count of possessing restricted items, and 1 count of unlawful possession of weapons. These charges right now are considered unrelated to Phoebe's disappearance, but that's just an important side note, and put it on a sticky note and up there on your whiteboard. So there's also speculation that the housemate may also share custody of 2 children, and that she's in an intimate relationship with James Wood, who's also living at the same address. Why are you waffling on about this, you ask? This is all the criminological side of analysis. Who is involved? Who are they? Give us a little background on them. That's essentially what we're doing. That's all the information I could find using OSINT that was appropriate to share. It's also important to note that that silver grey Hyundai iX35 that was declared a crime scene, as well as their place of residence, that Hyundai belonged to the housemate, the female housemate. So they're also, as we said, the investigators are looking into Goodnight Scrub National Park. They're doing an intensive search with specialist units like cadaver dogs, drones, and all of the works. So you will have probably seen, if you've been watching the news or reading on social media, they have been taking out some brown paper bags, which we know is usually to contain evidence. So whether that is related to her case or not, that's another thing. It is believed to be linked to Phoebe's disappearance. However, that's all being forensically tested, so that's all we can talk about there. Also, I just want to note, I may seem a little bit vague, but this is an active case, and we've got to be really careful with fresh active cases. We use the word allegedly a lot, like I've spoken about in previous episodes. We have to allege everything because nothing is confirmed. Nothing's been charged or seen through the court and things like that. So it's difficult, but we're going to get there, guys, and we're going to get into the analysis and my opinion, which is, it's a big one. So just bear with me. And I'm going to get into a geographical analysis, which is lots of fun. And you can do that yourself. We have a lot of citizen sleuths, as I like to call them, web sleuths, great website. And I think it's actually really useful. A lot of people are against it. I think it's useful. I think the more brains on a situation or a case, the better. And yes, it's obviously going to come with a couple of odd people with odd opinions. That's fine. We can filter those out. We all know how to behave like adults. But I think it's great. And you don't need to have the background that I do to have an opinion and have a look into things yourself. Absolutely not. And what I do, even as a professional, is open up Google Maps. I don't live in Queensland. So Google Maps, satellite, fantastic. Gives me a view of where things are in proportion to each other, of the, topography, is it bushes, etc. I love to do that. Street view, all about it. So jump on Google Maps and have a little look if you're not from the area. So we've got 3 particular places in question. We've got the Bundaberg Regional Airport. That's where she was meant to be. So we can confirm that. We can confirm that she lived in Gingin. I really hope that's how you say it. And then the investigators are looking at Goodnight Scrub National Park. So I am just sticking with those 3, okay? So they're confirmed. Those 3 places are confirmed. Let's run with it. So from Bundaberg Airport to Gingin is approximately 51 k's. Yes, I've done the maths, okay? This is approximately a 36-minute drive. The significance of this, you wonder? So the route between the airport and Gin is crucial because that encompasses the last known locations associated with Phoebe. Whether she actually was dropped off at the airport, that's alleged. I'm not even going to go into my opinion on that, so let's move on. Gin to Goodnight Scrub National Park. So the distance there is between 30 and 40 kilometres southwest of Gin. The terrain is dense bushland with limited access, making search efforts challenging. Now, the distance between Bundaberg Regional Airport and Goodnight Scrub National Park is about 95 kilometres by road, so it's quite a distance. So depending on which route is taken, and of course dependent on traffic conditions, but the most common way involves travelling from Bundaberg to Gin. Okay, so keep that in mind because that is a route that would have had to be taken if Phoebe was going from home to the airport. Okay, so the most common route involves travelling from Bundaberg to Gin via the Bruce Highway, then continuing southwest to the park via Goodnight Road and Mingo Road. This journey would take typically around an hour and 15 minutes under normal driving conditions. So what are you talking about, you ask? Have I gone off on an investigative tangent? Yes, I have, because I like to work with facts and I like to work backwards. Don't ask me why, it just works for me. Have you ever done those mazes? I'm sure you have. Like in a kid's book, when you were a kid or with your kid, and it's like, get the dog to his bone, like through the maze. I always start with a bone. I never start with a dog. It gives me the right answer the first time and I don't need to go over it. And that's how I operate in forensics. So what am I talking about? How does this relate? There's a number of businesses, including security companies, that operate in the Bundaberg and Gin areas, meaning there's options in reviewing CCTV along these routes to see if they picked up the Hyundai iX35. Now, on media reports, they say that Phoebe was seen arguing with the driver of the Hyundai. Interesting. I'd like to know where that was so I can place that on the map. But as far as research goes, I have found OzSpy Security Solutions, Retchenberg Security and Locksmiths, and security enterprises who would potentially have lists of where they have installed their security monitoring systems in the Bundaberg and Gin areas. So while these companies they do supply and install, they would have information about what businesses or residents have CCTV along these routes. That's not public information, obviously, but that would be something authorities can look into. So shout out QPS. In addition to that option, the Bundaberg Regional Council operates CCTV cameras within the Bundaberg and surrounding regions for public safety and incidents response. So I'm sure that's another avenue that they will have taken. I know you can't see me and you can only hear me, but that's a little wink and a nudge to QPS again. But strategic considerations. We have to consider two factors into the search here, and the first thing is accessibility and the second is search challenges. So in terms of accessibility, the remote nature of Goodnight Scrub National Park, as I said, jump on satellite, that'll help you out. It suggests that it could be used to conceal evidence or remains, okay? Now, we're not saying that Phoebe is deceased, but if we are looking for something to do with Phoebe, we're either looking for her belongings, weapons, items of hers, or herself, okay? So if this is an effort to conceal evidence or remains, we have to consider how a person could do so, okay? So we're thinking worst case scenario, okay? We're thinking, do we have remains or heavy objects, etc.? And what we do have is Goodnight Scrub National Park, and they have information that has taken them there. We don't have that information, but they do, so we have to just trust the process, guys. And what are the access points, okay? What are the access points, and are they by foot? Are they by vehicle? Are there any areas that are accessible by car? Could two people carry the weight of a deceased body, factoring in that a person's body after death is not heavier by weight, but it is harder to maneuver due to muscle tone being lost? This loss of muscle tone after death makes the body limp, okay, and passive. And when a body is limp and passive after death, it makes it more difficult to lift and carry, which gives a really real and realistic illusion of a greater body weight. So when you hear the term dead weight, that's what people are talking about. We also have to factor in the timeline here, because if there was a potential deceased body being transported, for example, and it was hours post-death, again, for example, a body then goes into rigor, okay, and it stiffens, which again makes the body super awkward to handle, particularly if the limbs are locked into a certain position. I've previously worked on a case of a victim who passed away, and at the time of death, they had fallen in a very unusual position. And that person was there for quite some time, and they went into rigor before they were found. And that means that that body was stuck in that position. Once it hits rigor, the way that it was found is the way that the body will stay. So we don't know that either. Again, this is all just ideas, but the longer a body goes into decomp again, then the postmortem changes also change the composition of the person, okay? So in other words, in plain English, the more time that has passed after somebody has passed away, the more gas buildup from putrefaction, which causes body bloating. Again, that doesn't significantly increase body weight, but maneuvering a body that has all of that gas built up, that's another factor, and definitely not usually a one-person job. If I'm jumping into the behavioural and forensic insight here, I just want to say, okay, there's a discrepancy in accounts. So the housemates claim that they dropped Phoebe off at the airport. Yes, or near the airport, on Airport Drive, I believe they said. Correct me if I'm wrong. But that information is contradicted by the CCTV evidence showing that she never entered the terminal. So what I'm saying here is, forensically speaking, there is no evidence that they dropped her off there, okay? So that's why I just haven't based it off that. I will base my theory around the fact that she should have been there and she was travelling in that direction. Can I confirm to you that she was dropped off there? No, I cannot. So the next point is the lack of communication behaviourally. Phoebe's sudden disappearance without any communication, that's completely inconsistent with the character that has been described. So that's by family accounts and friends' accounts. She obviously was also going to travel to WA to see her boyfriend, and he had not heard from her. So this is just not typical behaviour of Phoebe, according to everybody who knows her. I also want to chat a bit about the significance, I guess, of declaring crime scenes, because they had pretty early on declared the Hyundai and the residence as crime scenes. When authorities cordon off a property or a vehicle, like they have done in this instance, it's not just about containment, it's about preserving layers of narrative. So blood, fibres, soil, even what's missing from a scene can speak volumes. So while we could speculate that something had happened in the residence, they may also just be looking for things of significance that should be there that are not. So it's presence of evidence and lack of evidence too. So that's also really significant, particularly in missing persons cases. We want to know what somebody has on them, what they don't have on them. And the cadaver dogs, as far as that goes, they are used to detect the scent of human decomp, okay? That's what we're using them for. And that can last even weeks post a person's death, because scent pools in low-lying areas. It's called a sink. If you've ever done science at a postgraduate level or environmental science, you will know what I'm talking about. The scent pooling in low-lying areas like water and different parts of places like Goodnight Scrub that are lower lying, and if there's hills, scents will pool at the bottom of the hills, at the bottom of the ridges in the water, and they will hold in there like water in a sink, I guess. And the cadaver dogs can smell, what would you even say, detect, I guess, scents even weeks after something has been there. In terms of marking the vehicle as a crime scene, that could be for various reasons. It's obviously because Phoebe was in that vehicle. She was confirmed to have been in that vehicle, so they need to test whatever they can. And that vehicle is just basically going to be treated as a forensic container. Don't touch this vehicle, it's ours, we need to test everything we can. There could be other things in there that we're not sure about. They obviously found the weapons-related things for the housemate. But in terms of Goodnight Scrub, I want to talk about environmental DNA, okay, which us forensic nerds call eDNA. But today we're going to say environmental DNA so you don't get confused. I like to make this a pretty informal chat, just so you get used to the terms, because once I've said it a few times, I may go off on a tangent and I want you to know what I'm talking about. So environmental DNA, okay? So we've got temperature. So heat, humidity, what else have we got in a bush, guys? Like insects, predators, all of these things combined and separate, but potentially combined, they accelerate decomposition. So again, if we're referring to a person who has passed away, and again, we're not assuming that that's what they're looking for, because they could be looking for weapons or luggage or mobile phones. But if we are talking about a person who is deceased, all of these things contribute to decomposition accelerating. And this affects how remains or clothing might be recovered. So there's a theory in forensics called the soil transfer theory. Okay, so if remains were moved, there are traces on the soil or soil on the clothing or tools. Okay, so just it's like a chain reaction, or tools that could be matched back to areas within the park, because there's obviously different parts of the year, there's different pollination going on, like springtime would be a big one for that. There's a lot going on in nature that can tell you a lot about crime. Do not be fooled by CSI and these things you're looking at and they're like, oh, there's no tire tracks, we can't do anything. Wrong. Way back to the start of forensics, we have Locard's exchange principle, and that is one we live by, and it is a proven fact. It is science. I live by it. Everyone else in forensics lives by it, is that every contact leaves a trace, and you might not see it with the naked eye. If there has been something there, those two things that have touched each other, those two surfaces, will leave an imprint on each other one way or another. If it's microscopically, so it may be, and it probably would be. That's why we have forensics. We can tell, okay? But if you, for example, are wearing a cotton t-shirt and you've just hugged your boyfriend and he's wearing a cotton t-shirt, his is black and yours is blue. Well, if we look at that under a microscope, I can guarantee you we are going to find a piece of fiber of his shirt on yours and yours on his. And that's what we're talking about here. So soil tells a very big narrative behind this. We can detect soil disturbances. We have a device called a ground penetrating radar that will scan the soil for disturbances. It can go quite deep. We've got LiDAR scanning. There's so many things that the everyday person would not have heard of that can be used. So the background on Goodnight Scrub, I just went off absolutely on a tangent. Background on Goodnight Scrub National Park, okay? I've done my research. It's a remote 6,600 hectare reserve with dense, dry rainforest and rugged terrain. It's huge, you guys, absolutely huge. But it is accessible only via limited four-wheel drive trucks, making searches logistically challenging. However, not super challenging, because if we are, again, looking at an area and we say, okay, if it was accessed by vehicle, how far can we get in and what entrance points can we get in with that vehicle? If you look on maps, which I did, and you pop in the closest street name, can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, there's one specific street that goes quite far in there. I believe it is a dirt track, but it goes quite far in there. You'd be looking in there. Are there other points of access around, access with a vehicle? Are there other points around that aren't off a main road can you go off a little fork or intersection where you're not necessarily going to be seen by somebody driving past? That's another huge one. I also want to note, while I'm on this topic, that most people who commit crimes, if a crime has been committed here, but in general, they're not sitting at home planning the best route to drive and the quickest way and blah, blah, blah. It's generally as at the moment, where can I go? How can I do this? So we don't need to spend too much time, with that sort of thing. We just need to think like if you were there at this giant national park and you've chosen this is the spot that I'm going to, let's talk like normal people. Not that it's normal to throw rubbish out of a car, but I'm going to say I need to throw my Macca's Happy Meal out the car because it's gross and I need to get it away from me. Let's say I'm pregnant and the smell is just killing me. And I'm throwing that out, but I don't want anyone to see me. Where are you throwing that out, okay? Did you write down like a detailed note of where you were going to go to do that, or did you just go there and find the most appropriate spot and throw it out where no other car saw you? So that's the best example I can give you because I hate people who litter. So I can't relate, but that was the best example I could come to at that time. Anyway, there's also wild pig activity and other scavenger species in that scrub national park. That can also complicate body recovery and decomposition timelines. Historically, also, I found a few sites that said that national park historically was used for hidden stolen cars and illegal hunting camps, and that locals know the area is isolating. I don't know how factual that is. I did go quite deep onto the internet to find that, but anyway, my last comment before closing off with a few bits and pieces would be to check all information provided, because I'm unsure who actually confirmed that she was last seen on Airport Link Road. Did someone see her there? As far as I'm aware, it was a comment made by somebody, but if there was CCTV of that, then I'm sure that they would have released that and released those like images being like this is where she was last seen for the public to garner assistance, but there's no evidence of that, so I'm not going to speculate there. If it was the housemates that last saw her there because they dropped her there, I would like to know why did they drop her there and so close to the airport but not at the actual terminal? And does that even count as a confirmed sighting? Did she even make it that far? Who reported seeing her arguing with the driver of the Hyundai? And where was that? Because for all we know, that was her last known sighting alive. I know that there was text messages from James Wood saying he was the last person to see her alive, but literally no one else has said that except him. So I don't know if he's referring to that. She may not have even made it out of the vehicle alive, like who knows? And if she did, why were their number plates on the Hyundai altered? They have been changed like by hand, and you can very clearly tell they've been altered by hand. My opinion is that she never even made it to that Airport Link Road. Reports say that her housemates aren't immediate family members, so are they distant relatives? Like, how does she know these people? I feel like the public need more information with that. Did the boyfriend leak his own texts, the boyfriend being James Wood, did he leak his own text to cover his own ass by saying he was putting in an effort to search for her, to paint his own public image? Like, I don't understand that. I think that could be likely. And the house, that there was reports saying the house was derelict and unhygienic. The house was a hovel. It was absolutely disgusting, surrounded by trash. I don't know how anybody could live there. It honestly reminded me of a house off the Hoarders. If you haven't seen that, look it up. Disgusting. I'll post some pictures on social media of this because there's so many questions. There was a bus noted in one of the articles saying that, that female housemate was living in the bus. But then I also saw that the bus at the property was also advertised on Facebook Marketplace. Very odd. But my forensic opinion is this, okay? In Australia, more than 30,000 people are reported missing each year. Of these, around 60% are under 18, and girls aged between 13 and 17 make up most commonly reported. This is data from the AFP. This isn't an anomaly. Girls like Phoebe make up a disproportionately large number of missing persons reports, often due to unstable home environments, coercive control, or high-risk peer relationships. But in Phoebe's case, the lack of movement on CCTV and abandoned flight and missing belongings signals something far more sinister to me. Over 95% of missing persons are found within 38 hours. By day 7, over 98% have returned or been located. Cases that remained open past the 30-day mark are statistically more likely to involve foul play. Now, we're not at that mark yet, but Phoebe's case passed all critical thresholds. No ATM activity, no phone records, no trace. These things are all the basic checks that are done for a proof of life. When a missing teen fails to resurface within the first week, the probability statistically of voluntarily being absent, it drops dramatically. As a forensic scientist, that changed the scope of the investigation for me and the urgency of recovery, because obviously the sooner the potential remains are found, the easier the evidence is to examine to give answers and closure for family and friends. In 84% of abduction-related homicides, the offender attempts to conceal the victim, their remains, or key evidence, often using secondary locations like bushlands, waterway, or abandoned vehicles. The tampered Hyundai, the remote drop point at the regional airport, and the state of the home is now declared a crime scene. These elements fit the concealment pattern. The choice of goodnight scrub, it's dense, it's remote, it's ecologically complex. It's also statistically aligning with known concealment locations in rural Queensland missing persons cases. According to the AIC and the AIHW, teens living in a non-parental household or informal housing arrangements are at a 3 times greater risk of becoming long-term missing. Phoebe isn't just a teenager. She is statistically categorised as a vulnerable one, living in a cluttered and unstable residence with adults who are now under investigation. This raises multiple red flags. Her situation places her in one of the highest risk categories for exploitation or disappearance. Over 40% of rural Queensland body recoveries occur within 5 kilometres of a road, but terrain with high canopy cover or natural watercourses like Goodnight Scrub, they're remote and they're not entirely inaccessible. It fits the profile of secondary body disposal sites: dense cover, low foot traffic, and limited surveillance. It's also super common for offenders to choose areas that they're familiar with but not emotionally attached to. It's possible that someone knew that terrain well enough to feel confident that it would conceal. Forensics is a science, so when I'm giving a forensic opinion, it's based on fact and data analysis. Sometimes it makes it seem like it's not particularly personable, but it's an opinion that's supposed to be generated based on experience and objective evidence. If I'm giving my forensic opinion only, like right now, it's in the nicest, most respectful way possible. I'm saying that things are not looking good for Phoebe, and I really wish that was not the case. That's why I'm here as a victim advocate as well as a scientist. But unfortunately, given the factors like the time pass and the circumstances, it's just not on the good side of science. I wish this wasn't the case for Phoebe. I hope it's not the case for Phoebe, and I wish it wasn't the case for every single other missing person in this country. We have a long way to go to bridge this gap and fix systemic issues, and I honestly see the only way through that is A, through crime prevention, and B, through specialty resources, not just your regular police. All respect to them. We need specialist teams. We need more funding. We need resources. We need better housing. This house was in no way fit for a 17-year-old girl to be living in. But that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to love and leave you. I hope you have gained a little bit of insight out of this analysis. I haven't gone too much into it while it's still active and ongoing. I'll update you further if there's any more progression on this case. I've been talking too much that my words are blending into one, but I just wanted to do a little bit of an analysis. Oh my gosh.
Wow, I need a coffee. I wanted to do an analysis and encourage you to not be discouraged by the fact that you do not have a degree if you do not have one. I want you to question things, ask questions, look into things, theorize yourself, be curious, and look for the truth. That's what my podcast is about. And you are so welcome to share your opinions on my group on Facebook or on any of our platforms. We welcome it, okay? We welcome discussion, healthy discussion, respectful discussion. And again, everything's alleged at this point, but it's important to have discussions. And I'm thinking of all of Phoebe's friends and family right now and everybody else who is going through something like this. But thank you so much for sticking around and listening. And that's the end of today's podcast. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I hope you have enjoyed it here. If so, you can subscribe to stay up to date on new episodes, or you can find us both on Instagram and Facebook and now TikTok. Please feel free to jump onto our Facebook group to join in on the case discussions. You can find the link to our group in our podcast notes. As always, stay curious, stay informed, and until next time, trust your instincts and keep seeking the truth.